Hi, folks, it's Dr. Christine Sauer here, and today I'm talking with Magic Barclay about how we can improve the mental health with practical tools. Magic, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Now, mental health is one of my favorite topics because I have a lot of experience with it personally and professionally. And I love profiling other practitioners that help people in other ways, in different ways, because I believe people should have a choice as of who they choose to help them with their health. And there's many, many options out there. And I think the best way to find out is podcasts and shows like this, where you can actually meet or virtually meet a practitioner and hear from their own mouth why they're doing what they're doing and how you can help others. Now, that said, Magic, I know you are a lead practitioner at Holistic Natural Health in Australia. I love Australia, and I have also a podcast. And you love magic, like, well, of course, you're called Magic. And your life changed after you yourself went through life-threatening conditions. So let us know, why did you start doing what you're doing today? And what's your story?
Okay, look, it all starts, of course, way before the life-threatening conditions. Growing up, I had a lot of childhood relationship experiences that were adverse, other experiences that were adverse. And so what that means was very unhappy childhood, no proper relationships, no proper relationship with myself. Fast forward into teenagehood, all I did was punish my body through anorexia, through alcoholism. And that all came to a grinding halt when I met the wrong man and got pregnant and married very quickly. And so once I became pregnant, I had to start eating and I had to stop drinking. Now, this was a bit of a problem because my body had never really been treated properly. And now all of a sudden, I'm reading all the books, I'm trying to do all the antenatal stuff for my baby, but my body wasn't set up and neither was my brain. So, eating then became overeating. It became secret eating and it became binge eating because I still had some mental health issues going on that previously doctors had tried to prescribe my way out of it. That made it worse. And, now all of a sudden here I was pregnant, not taking anything, not doing anything, and not knowing anything. So, fast forward another 14 years down the track, baby number one's 14, baby number two's 12. I still have no relationship with myself. I've lost the marriage, and, that was probably a good thing for both of us, but I had no relationship with me. And so when I was diagnosed with cancer and Lyme disease and told that I'd already had a mini stroke and more was on the way, I didn't know what to do because I didn't know who I was and I didn't know what made me tick. So I'd replaced my lack of sense of self with all the labels of being a mum and being a carer and, being an ex-wife and being a daughter, but I didn't know who I was. So come the big cancer word come into my life, now all of a sudden I'm someone with cancer. I'm still not me. So that was a real turning point for me to look at, what did this mean for my body? What did it mean for my mind? What got me here? And it was a lot of soul searching, a lot of coaching, and, really facing the hard truths of I had no sense of self. That's what got me there. It was the toxic things that I did to myself to numb myself instead of building my neurotransmitters, instead of building my gut health, my brain health, my immune health. Now here I was, 12 months to live, 2 kids with special needs that relied on me. And who was I? It was like, penny drops and you just hear it hit that concrete floor and it just keeps rolling and rolling. That rolling set me on the course of learning. And so throwing myself into natural health practices and doing my best to recover my body and my mind from these health conditions and really finding that sense of self was key for me.
Wow, that is a powerful story. And I think powerful stories always make an impact on our listeners because it shows them that we as humans have the capacity to grow beyond our circumstances. And as I like to call it, to sparkle again. And because I'm pretty sure when you were diagnosed with cancer, Lyme disease, and all those challenges, stroke on top of it, you were not sparkling at this moment. And it is
I had completely lost my sparkle.
yeah. How old were your children when you were going through that?
They were 14 and 12, and they both have special needs. So for
Oh, wow.
me, giving into these conditions was not an option. And, I have to be really honest, suicide crossed my mind a number of times. But the one thing that I couldn't do was leave those two kids.
Mhm.
And they got me through. And, thank goodness my love for them far outweighed my pain.
That is good, well said, because I remember I listened to Viktor Frankl when I was young. You probably heard of his book, Man's
Yeah.
Search for Meaning. It's a great book. I recommend to everybody to learn it. And one of his favorite quotes is, if man has a why to live for, he will or she will tolerate nearly any how. And it's really true. And if you lose your why, you are on the way of dying. So that's probably something you went through to discover your why. And what is your why?
My why now is very different to what it was when I had cancer. So when I had cancer, my why was to live so that I could teach my children never to be scared of a disease again. And I still do that to this day. But now my why has adapted. And that is, I live to share information and to help other people so that they don't get into the situation that I was in for so many years. Because you know what? When you're at a doctor's surgery and they're telling you 12 months, there's nothing more terrifying than that. And, how do you tell people? What do you tell people? What do you tell your family? And when you've got kids, how the heck do you face those little faces and tell them? And that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. So now what I do is I help other people so they're not in the same situation. And if they get into that situation, I look at root cause. So what got you there? Because treating what you're dealing with right now is, well, I mean, it's important, let's face it. But if you don't treat what got you there, things are going to keep popping up. And that's obviously where I got to. And so root cause is what I treat, what my practitioners treat, what my holistic counselor treats. And as a team, we really want to help people. So my why is very different now.
Yeah, yeah. And we are evolving as humans. We are moving on. We are growing as people. I mean, not everybody does, but many people that are interested in personal growth, and podcast listeners usually are, they are. And holistic or root cause medicine, I think, is the medicine of the future. At least the medicine that works. I know it works. You know it works. And that's why we are so passionate about telling the world, do not believe what the TV tells you, to just pop a pill and your weight will go away, your problems will be solved. It won't happen that way. And I'm not saying that conventional medicine is bad. It's not. It's just when you just rely on it and not look at the whole body, 5 dimensions of health. That's what makes health and wellness magic. And I love how you use that word too. Now, tell me, you are also a gardener and a mom of 2. I love that. I used to have chickens myself, so I love vegetable gardening. I'm always a purpose-driven person. I'm not into flowers too much. I love vegetables because it tastes good. They're good for you. Tell me a little bit about that aspect of you. You raised 2 children under difficult circumstances, and teenagers can be mean. How did they
My
adjust?
teenagers have never been mean, which is really lovely. I guess I'm really lucky that they're both on the autism spectrum because we're a really tight unit. I look at people with neurotypical kids and they go through that whole teenager thing. We didn't do that. So,
Very
I'm really
fortunate.
lucky.
So tell me about your gardening passion. I know many natural healers and many natural health practitioners, like I say, love nature. They love gardening because everything goes back to the root, which is nature.
Correct. So part of what I do is I have to prescribe supplements. And some of these supplements, can be really hard to get. So I thought, well, we're changing how we eat. We're not eating conventional fruit and veg, we're eating organic. How about I study permaculture? And not only can I grow organic food for my family, but I can do it in a way that's really symbiotic with nature, that the birds and the animals outside can profit from the garden, as can we, and benefit. And, everything works with each other. So I companion plant. I actually grow a lot of my medicinal herbs now. And so now I'm looking at distilling things so I can make things like my evening primrose oil by myself and, things like that. And it's doing it without toxicity, and it's doing it without fear and worry, because I don't know if overseas, in the past 12 months, you guys had a lettuce shortage. Here in Australia, we were told there was a shortage of lettuce, and to buy a head of lettuce would cost you $14. At the very same time, I had about 100 heads of lettuce in a garden, and I was giving it to all my friends going, I cannot eat another leaf of this stuff. Take it, please. So, when you grow through permaculture principles, things flourish and they blossom. And as you said, what's the point in having flowers? Well, I do have flowers. I have wildflowers, which are pollinator attracting and good bug attracting and bird attracting. And so what I find is I don't have to plant seeds as often. I walked out last week into the garden after 2 weeks of not being out there because I had the flu. And I have things popping up that I did not plant. There were things from this time last year. So having the right flowers in the right spot does benefit your garden. So look, I just love the wonder of nature, the magic of nature, I guess. And as I said, I'm moving towards now, my teas, my herbs, my medicinal herbs, and really understanding what they do, how they grow, and how they benefit myself and my family.
I love that what you're saying about going to nature and studying the plants and finding out what really dandelion grows here in large amounts, and people think it's a weed. It's an herb.
Yep.
It's a medicinal herb. And I remember myself when I was a teenager, I was always knowing that I wanted to be a doctor. And thankfully in Europe, to be a naturopath as a doctor and a doctor wasn't a contradiction like it's in North America. It was quite interesting. And so the first books I got was books about herbs, and I went out behind our house and studied every herb, and then I made tinctures just like you said, and tried it and ate it, and didn't quite like it, but it was fun to do. I think that is much better for young people, for children especially, to do with their parents if possible, than to sit in front of a computer and play video games.
Exactly. So last week I discovered that I have wrinkles. Now I have no makeup on tonight. It's 11 o'clock. It's way past my bedtime.
Yes.
But I wanted to talk to you at all. And so I have no makeup on. But what I realized was I have a lot of wrinkles happening here. I'm 51. It was bound to happen sooner or later. So what we did last week as a family was we went and picked some calendula flowers. We made a calendula hydrosol. And then from that, we added some essential oils and some bits and pieces and some argan oil. And I made a wrinkle cream. And the boys were saying to me,
Yes.
why are we picking these orange flowers that are everywhere in the garden? I said, because they're calendula and they're so important. And by the way, this hydrosol that's left over, you guys can drink. And it's really good for your immune system. So they're now drinking calendula hydrosol left over from me making an anti-wrinkle cream. And, you know,
And it's good for bruises too, unless somebody's allergic to calendula, which happens too. But if you're not, hey, it's a great herb, it's a great plant, it's wonderful.
it is. But, you know, a week ago, before we started this, you know, factory in the kitchen of making me some anti-wrinkle cream, my kids just thought that was some crazy orange flower that was just everywhere. Now they know what it is and why it's so important.
You know, that's a really good teaching point. And I wish my grandchildren were closer so I could directly take them in nature and reach them too. Now, how did you get into mold? Because I know you're also a mold practitioner.
Yeah, look, we lived in a rental home for 2 years that had black mold, and I had lost most of my excess weight before we moved into that house. As we lived there, it all came back. And, you know, so did a nasal drip and a constant clearing my throat and white spots on my skin and scratchy eyes and runny nose in the morning. And it was happening to my kids, and it was also happening to my pets. And I knew we were in a moldy house, you could see it. And our landlord was doing nothing about it. So I decided I'm going to study exactly what this stuff is, what it does. And you can bet your bottom dollar, as soon as I got into my studies, we got out of that house.
I can imagine
Yeah,
mold toxicity is so important.
yeah, yeah. So I love
Oh,
helping
wow.
people with that now. It's not
Yeah.
the easiest thing to treat. It's quite a long process, but so important.
Yeah, and I actually had a mold remediation specialist on this podcast a few months ago, and it was quite interesting how much is involved to, for one, build houses so hopefully the mold can't settle in them, and the second, once a house has mold, to fix it. It's a hard
Yeah,
thing to do. Sometimes it's
yeah.
better to just move out, especially if it's a
And what
rental.
I say to people, sorry,
No, no, go
Christine,
ahead.
but what I say to people is, you know, when you're about to leave a moldy house, don't forget the mold spores are in you. They're in your pets, they're in your clothes, they're in your furnishings. So you have to look at the whole picture. Don't just leave the house and go, well, now we're out. That's great. You know, you really have to keep on with it.
Yeah, you're right. And especially watch that the environment where you go next is not conducive to mold growth, because mold is everywhere around us.
Yeah.
It's just the quantity and the conditions that make it grow. And we all know that, for example, in the fridge, the food doesn't get moldy as fast as when you put it outside in the warm air and moisture. That's what mold likes. That's why bathrooms get moldy the first. Awesome. It's great to talk with somebody that really knows what she's talking about. What about your
And
fur babies, you're
oh,
saying?
my fur babies. So I have two little girls now. I have Whiskey and I have Daphne. Whiskey is a nearly 18-year-old rescue. We rescued her when she was a couple of weeks old, and she's just the loveliest little cat. And Daphne is a year and a half old now, and she's a half Siberian, half Moggy cat. And so she's a little bit quirky. So if you hear a noise, it's probably her hurling herself at my office door because she hates being alone. So yeah,
You
she
know,
makes life
pets
interesting.
can be a really asset for mental health. And of course, they catch mice too, if that's what you want them to do. We personally, it's interesting. People are usually either cat people or dog people. There's mixes. I personally love dogs better than cats. They're too independent. They go too high out on my surfaces, and you have to teach them to stay down. It's hard with cats. My
Yeah.
dog, he doesn't even try it anymore. He can jump up on the.
We
He
used to have dogs, but we can't have them where we are at the moment. And
Yeah.
so, you know, having Daphne is kind of like having a dog anyway, because
Is it?
she's
That's good.
she's a
They
bit
have
more
personality,
dog-like.
don't they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's lovely. And cats, some people are really allergic to cats. I know my son has a severe cat allergy. He can't have cats and he doesn't have pets. But sometimes even a stuffed animal is a good alternative if you really can't have pets, if you keep it clean for mold purposes and house dust. And it is a mental health thing too.
It is. So there's a lot of studies out there that show having any pet, whether you're a cat person, a dog person, a fish person, a bird person, whatever, having any pet, having that relationship with a pet and spending quality time with them can actually improve your mental health outcomes.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, you're not, looking after someone that's going to grow up and leave you like kids do, but you're looking after someone that constantly needs you and is constantly there to listen to you. Doesn't matter how bad a day I've had. I can cuddle up on the couch with my girls and, they're purring and they're listening to me intently. Do they care that I'm venting to them about my day? Not at all. They just care that mum's home.
Yeah.
And so that really brings you back to this living thing just wants me. They don't care, how much money I made today, what I can buy them. They just don't care. They're there for that true bond, that true relationship. And so any pet, whether it's a fish, an axolotl, a bird, you can have that really close bond. And that's such a boost for your mental health.
I couldn't agree more. And many people tell me, and I experienced it myself, when you have a bad day, you come home and your dog or cat greets you at the door. The dog wags its tail, the cat starts purring, makes you feel good right away, because this is a classic example for unconditional love. And unconditional love is very hard to get outside a coaching relationship, right?
Exactly. And petting a furry animal in particular, like a dog or a cat, can actually lower your blood pressure. It can slow your heart rate so that you're not, amped up and wired the whole time. And also a cat's purr can actually really heal your heart. So the frequency, the vibration of a cat's purr can really get into your heart vessels and just really open them up. So, there's a lot of studies out there that show this. So if in doubt, go and get yourself a pet, create a long-lasting relationship.
There's so many aspects to a real healthy, holistic life. And I always say mental health is not just your thoughts. Mental health is just not your brain, what you think. It's a whole body working together. I talk about the 5 dimensions of mental health, because really everything has to be in balance. And when it's out of balance, then we get sick.
Yeah.
And root cause medicine, like what you do, integrative health, helps to restore that balance. And there's
Totally.
nothing to being really healthy than bringing us back in balance. Yes, I think life always throws us out of balance. Sooner or later, it will. There's events, there's things that happen. We had a wildfire here last week, 2 weeks ago, and we had to evacuate for a week. That's stressful. Some people were their houses burned down, very stressful. The smoke affects all of North America, very stressful, very unhealthy for the people that have problems. That is pushing it out of balance. And people that do not have a good immune system, that are already damaged, they have a real hard time dealing with that. And they need holistic health practitioner like us to restore them back to balance. And I remember Australia, where you are. It's an amazing country. I used to read the science fiction novel by Arthur Upfield, and they are set in Australia, in the outback. That's pretty much all I know about Australia. I read all of his books as a teenager. I learned about the Great Rock. I learned about the native culture in Australia. I learned about Melbourne. It was fascinating. And you're living there. It's fascinating. And with
It
the
can
help of,
be.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
you're right here from my standpoint. Go across through the whole world, and on the other side, you're there. And amazingly, you're not upside down. That's the
No.
magic of technology.
You know what? We have some amazing animals. We have some amazing spaces, bushland, coastal regions, outback, desert. We have Uluru, the Great Rock. We have lots of wonderful things, but so many Australians don't know what's in their backyard. I don't know if it's the same where you are, but I live
Yes.
outside of a big city, an hour outside of a big city here in Australia, and pretty much on the verge of the bush. So if I get in my car and I drive 10 minutes down the road, I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, wow.
And, I'll say I'll ring a friend and I'll say, I'm out at such and such place. And they'll go, where's that? And I say, it's an hour and a half from where you are right now. I've never been there, they'll say. And I'm like, why not? So it's something I did when my kids were young, and we still do. Was a lot of road trips around Australia and seeing things, off the beaten track. And I homeschooled my boys. So, when it came to learning about karst formations, we drove over to one, 2 states away. It was a 2-day drive, but we saw a karst formation and we went cave diving. And, that's really when it's all at your doorstep, you have a right and a responsibility to go and see it.
Yeah, and it triggers that the children especially, they want to learn about it because it's real. It has application and reality. It's different if you learn something in school, you don't know what it means. And that is often why school fails, because it's not connected with what people need. If you tell a kid you have to learn how to divide, why? It's hard. But when you tell a kid, take it in the grocery store and says, here's a flour, 5 pounds, here's 1 pound of flour, the 1 pound costs $2, 5 pounds is $7.99, which is cheaper per pound. Math.
Exactly.
That's
And
real math magic.
the same thing comes to healthy eating. So while we're talking about education, this is real education. So not what you're going to learn in school, but real education. My younger son, who's now 21, said to me, I think it was about 2 days ago, can I have a cucumber from the garden? I said, no. Yes, but I really want a cucumber. And I said, no, you can't have one. But why, Mum? Why can't I have a cucumber? I said, go outside and see what's growing. Tell me if you see the cucumber plants. He walked out, and where they were, a month ago, they're not there now because we're now in winter. He said, there's no cucumber plants. I said, that's because things grow seasonally. And he said, but if we go to the supermarket, I can get a cucumber. I said, honey, that's not a real cucumber because it's not grown seasonally. Doesn't have the same nutrients, doesn't have the same characteristics, doesn't have the same health properties, beneficial properties. You cannot have a cucumber because we are in winter. And so he learned, from that interaction, okay, I can't have a cucumber, but I can have a carrot or a beetroot because now we're in winter and they're growing really well in winter. I can have a lettuce because that grows all year round. So learning what grows and what benefits you is really, really important. Just going to have a sip of water.
That's great. I love that example of teaching your children by practical example. And I think it's important. And here where I live in Canada, we have a short growing season, and really fresh vegetables like tomatoes, peppers are available maybe for 6 weeks. That's it. And there's methods like freezing that are more conducive to food preservation than others. And I think it's important that we learn about it. I actually found it so important that I wrote a little book about it for my clients, and it's on Amazon too, because it is really important that people know how to eat, what to eat, when to eat, and not just think, oh, it has a lot of calories, it must be bad for me. That's nonsense. Absolute. And I know you know that. Now, you also talk about gut health, and I want to talk a little bit with you about that. And then you have a strange method that nobody knows. It's called PNEI. Sounds like a pain, but I'm sure it's something
well, it
good.
can be.
So let's talk about gut health first and why it is important, and then get into that method.
So gut health is really important because your gut is your second brain. So we have the brain in our head. We all know that's there, but the gut is there as well. So we often, remember stories of someone saying, I had this gut instinct not to step into the road because a bus might come. So I waited, and then who knew? A bus came along. How did my gut know that? Well, the gut is the second brain, and it's actually the housing of good bacteria that actually make neurotransmitters for our mental health. So we can't dismiss gut health when we're talking mental health. They go hand in hand, and it's really important that we look after our gut integrity. Now, there's a whole lot of flora and fauna in our gut, microbiomes, and we need to feed those and we need to look after those. And so how we do that, it comes back to the whole thing of grow your own vegetables. We had carrots with our dinner tonight. I didn't 100% scrub the outside of them. And why not? Because we need some of that dirt. We need the minerals from that dirt to activate the vitamins that are in the vegetable for us to benefit from them. And so our gut needs those minerals as well. So as I was, half peeling the carrots, the kids said to me, "You're not washing them really well." And I went, "Don't worry. You'll eat them anyway. It's fine. It's fine." So we really do have to look after our gut health. And we've all heard the term leaky gut. It's become a buzzword over the past 30 years. Everyone diagnoses everyone with leaky gut, but what does it actually mean? It means that endotoxins are leaving the gut, going through the broken barrier of the gut lining, entering the bloodstream, causing mental health disorders, causing later brain disorders such as MS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. It can mean that our bodies seek these undigested proteins that are leaking out of the gut as well and try and seek and destroy those. And so, this is where autoimmune can begin.
Yeah.
And this is where mainstream medicine says autoimmune is your body attacking itself. Not entirely true. It's finding something that's a pathogenic entity or an undigested protein or an endotoxin, and it's trying to isolate that. So unfortunately, you can get damaged in the process. So this is why gut health is so important. But for people that suffer depression, people that suffer anxiety, the first thing I would do is say, what is your gut health like? Because that's where it starts. If these good bacteria are not able to do their jobs to produce the neurotransmitters for your mental health, well, of course, it's going to present somewhere else.
Yeah, that's very true. And a big problem, especially in North America, are the environmental toxins. They are sometimes here sprayed from the plains. Glyphosate is a big issue. Yep. It's outlawed in Europe because they know it destroys the gut bacteria. I had somebody on one of my earlier podcasts talking about that. It was originally developed as an antibiotic, and then they abandoned it for humans. They couldn't develop it because it was too toxic. So then some smart guy came up with, well, if it's too toxic for humans, why don't we spray it on food crops?
So here in Australia, our government, I'll try not to get you kicked off the air, but our government actually pay people to spray these things in our skies. And they call it the Cloud Setting Project. And they get paid a lot of money to drop a lot of chemicals to create rain or stop rain, or, you can watch the weather change as per the chemtrailing in the sky. Now, before you call me a conspiracy theorist, and, I don't mind if you do, but before you do that, we were talking about growing vegetables before. Now, we're in winter here in Australia, right? Tomatoes used to be, as I was growing up, you would hope and pray that the tomatoes would be nice and red for Christmas Day, right in the middle of our summer. Well, we're now in June. It's currently 4 degrees outside, 4 degrees Celsius. I have tomatoes still growing on plants that I haven't ripped out yet.
Wow.
That should not be happening. Our seasons are over 2 months late. Yeah, I have a friend who's also a permaculture gardener. Her apple trees are starting to bud. They should be bare. It's winter. Her apple trees think it's now spring, even though it's 4 degrees outside. So that is not a natural phenomenon in nature. for these plants to be so out of whack with their timing. So if the plants are doing that, what's happening to us?
That's
I'm
true.
just going to leave that there for thought.
And I've been talking to other people that say similar things. And I personally, yeah, you could call us conspiracy theory, but really, if the conspirators are telling the truth, who is here the conspirator? And you can look at it with your own eyes. And if you watch or listen to this podcast, please go do your research. Don't just switch on your TV. It will not tell you the whole story. There's good research on both sides of the story available on the internet, still available. I don't know how long, but it's still available.
It's still available.
Yes.
And here in Australia, these cloud seeding projects or chemtrailing projects,
Yeah,
the government documents are still readily available open source because they have to be. Because our government, with our taxpayers' money, has paid for these projects. So the data has to be available. And
yeah,
it
the
is.
problem in the worldwide, sorry to interrupt you, especially here in Canada, is our government just passed a censorship law. They passed it legally. So
That's
now
coming here
I,
too.
as a YouTube creator, Google has to check, am I in line with what our government says I should say? If not, they can take it down.
Yeah, it's
Even if
happening here
it's
too.
true. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. I find that very interesting. I've replaced my language and say now interesting, because really it is, and what's happening in the world generally.
Yeah.
And there's certainly something very interesting going on. And I think this period in history, future generation, if they exist, will remember this. Like
I'm
we
just going
remember.
to say this right now, right here, so people can maybe research some of this stuff. I will not be eating bugs. I will not own nothing and be happy.
No.
I will not be told that I cannot use cash. And I will not be told where I can live, how long I can travel, and if I can leave my zone. Sounds a little bit like a movie, doesn't it?
There are movies about that.
Yes.
I think the last pandemic, planned or not, it's a matter of opinion, has been eye-opening to many people. And it wasn't the first time that happened in history. And it was interesting to me because I was grown and raised in Germany. I was in Germany until I was 38. So in school, we learned all about Hitler and how he rose to power. Now, Hitler wrote a book, Mein Kampf, way before he was elected to be the Chancellor of Germany. We all know what happened. And in his book, he described exactly what's going to happen. Now, there's another book that was written in the 80s. It's called The Great Reset. I recommend you check it. I read it. Most people didn't.
Yeah.
It is very interesting. That's all I'm saying, too.
Yes, yes.
And I personally,
interesting.
coming from Germany, I also learned about biodynamic agriculture, Rudolf Steiner, the Waldorf movement, which is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I believe we could feed the whole world population if we went back to regenerative agriculture practices with responsible animal husbandry instead of exploitation in CAFOs, concentrated animal feedlots, which is animal abuse. But we don't do that yet. So
no,
God knows what will happen. It's interesting.
I hope and pray for the day that we can go back in time to regenerative farming and sustainable practices and caring for your neighbor and knowing who lives in your town and, actually having generations living together and caring for each other. I do hope that we can take that back.
There's 3 eternal values that have maintained humanity through history, and those are faith, hope, and love. And as the Bible and many of my clients, as myself, I have been raised in the Christian tradition, it says the greatest of these is love. And I firmly believe that. It's an energy form that we should embrace more instead of the opposite, which is hate.
And we were talking about pets before. They only have love for us. So why can't we be more like them and have love for our fellow man? That's all I'm going to say on that.
That's a wonderful suggestion. I'm all with you there. Now, towards the end, we need to know what that PNEI means.
Ah, yes. Okay. So I read a book a while ago. It's called When the Body Says No, and it's by Dr. Gabor Mate. I
Love it.
absolutely love his work. And
Great.
he mentioned this PNEI pathway, the psychoneuroendoimmunology, particularly of trauma. And so I rabbit holed it and I studied it and I ate up every bit of information I could on it. And I've actually written a practitioner's course to teach practitioners how to deal with this. But I'm going to give you an example. I love talking in public. I mean, I guess you can tell, but if I didn't, because maybe when I was at primary school, something happened and I might have stuffed up a little presentation or something, and that stuck in my mind and I made it mean something. And then I locked it away in the recesses of my brain somewhere. And now, here I am in my 50s and someone says, next week, I need you to do a talk to 35,000 people. I'm going to check my previous experience and find that time when I was in primary school and something went wrong. So the P, my psycho, my brain, my limbic system in particular, is going to say, you are not safe talking to people. It's happened before, could happen again. You're not safe. Now, the body's only need is to keep you safe, right? That's what it does all the time. My brain, as I'm sitting here in my office, is thinking, are those bookshelves going to fall? Is something going to fly off something? Are you safe? We don't even think about it. Our brain's doing that work for us. So the P has decided something happened when you were little. This is not safe. So now the N kicks in. And so over the next day, I might start feeling some, tingling in my hands, bit of neuropathy, pins and needles in my feet. I might start getting some back pain, sciatic nerve. And oh no, I can't go and do this talk because my back hurts so much. I'm going to ignore that because I really want to do the talk. So the N then kicks into the E, which is endo, the endocrine system. So all of a sudden I might be, having hot flashes, might start getting sweaty and clammy. I might, get nausea or, any of these endocrine system
Shakes, my heart
symptoms.
starts beating too fast and irregular.
Yeah, my thyroid might make my heartbeat ramp up. Because the endocrine system says, P said you're not safe. You didn't listen. N said you're not safe. You didn't listen. You're going to listen to me. But I'm still not going to listen because I want to do the talk. Then it's the day before the talk. I wake up and I'm like, oh, no, this is stuffy. There's something in my throat. I'm losing my voice. I can't do this. I can't do the talk tomorrow.
And my gut reacted too. I can't unchain myself from the toilet bowl.
Yeah.
I got the diarrhea. I have to stay home.
Exactly. And so this is all your immune system, the I. And the reason your gut reacts is because a lot of your immune system is in your gut. Okay. So all of a sudden, you're stuck to the toilet bowl, you're snotty, you're coughing, and tomorrow you've got to give a talk for 35,000 people. Like, what the heck? How's this going to work? Now, if you turn around that day and you go, do you know what? I'm okay. I know what I'm talking about. I really want to do this talk. Previously, something happened, but that was then. This is now. I am fine. You watch how quickly that immune system syncs with you and says, you're fine. You're safe. Endocrine system, she's safe. Endocrine system says to the nervous system, settle down. She's safe. The nervous system says to the psycho, to the limbic brain, do you know what? She's safe. Let her do the talk. You get on stage the next day, you absolutely kill it. You make sales, you do whatever you need to do. You get your message across and you walk off and you go, what happened? What was I worried about? This is the power of PNEI. It can stop us, or we can turn around and say, I am safe, and we can charge ahead and succeed. And so this is something I picked up from this book and something I work with a lot of my clients with, because the PNEI can relate to any trauma, whether it's stuffing up a talk in primary school or whether it's something, more traumatic than that. But it can also, and this is what's so interesting about the PNEI, sometimes it's not on trauma. Sometimes it can be on an illness. And so a lot of my clients will say, I was allergic to the pollen on the dandelions, so therefore all dandelions must be eradicated. And I'll say, okay, but when was that? I was 2. I was told I was allergic to it. Were you truly allergic? Do you have any allergic symptoms? Do you have an allergic immune system? No. You were told, and so you made it mean something. So your PNEI jumped in, and so now you want to eradicate all dandelions from your garden. That doesn't make sense. So, there's a lot of things. It's a very powerful collection of systems of the body that like to work together, and there's a lot of things we can apply it to.
Magic, that's wonderful. And there's some psycho-neuroimmunological methods to influence the brain if just talking, which often doesn't work.
Yeah.
I personally love havening techniques. I teach it because it puts the body in a safe haven. That's why it's called havening technique. It's especially for this effect. And Gabor Mate, he's a Canadian. He's great. I don't know if he does havening, but he's a great physician. I love him.
Yeah.
And his book is excellent. I also recommend it to everybody. So I love what you do. I really do. So if somebody here listening or talking to you says, wow, I need to meet magic and experience the magic of great coaching, how can they get you?
Okay, so our team can be found on our website, which is www.holisticnaturalhealth.com.au. So we are based in Australia, and it's holistic with a W because we use holism to treat. So no system works alone. We definitely treat whole of body. And so on the website, you'll find our podcast. You'll find our root cause analysis under health assessment. And that is our free call. So we do a free consult with anyone around the world and really find out what the root cause of things is. And you can find all sorts of information on there. Our social media is on there, lots of links, lots of goodies, lots of free information.
And that's wonderful. I make sure it's below the video and in the show notes for the video and the audio version. That was a wonderful and conversation, Magic. I'm so glad I met you and we had that chat today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
So and that was the end of this episode of Sparkles for Better Mental Health, Growth in 5 Dimensions. And make sure to stay tuned, subscribe, and tune in for the next episode. Bye-bye. When you combine modern science, ancient wisdom, nature, experience, and love, magic happens. I'm Dr. Christine Sauer, physician, naturopath, coach, human. It feels like magic to my clients when their lives are transformed through the skills combination of natural and human sciences, ancient philosophies, and caring human-to-human interaction. Discover this kind of modern wizardry and let's prepare powerful healing potions together. Come and enter our wonderful world of wellness.